item choices, different move choices. So we're going to have to watch over the course of the set to see exactly where those advantages can be carved out.
Exactly. Well, let's jump into it. Let's not keep you waiting any longer, Adam. The leads are out here. So there's going to be an Arcanine and a Rotom wash for both of these players. They put them on different sides of the field, so you kind of got that diagonal imagery going on. But crucially here, it looks like the Arcanine on James's side was faster, or potentially could be the speed side. But this situation, it gets the Intimidate off first, followed up by Intimidate on Eduardo's side.
Yeah, every bit of information you can carve out early on with abilities such as Intimidate is always so important. And I think both these trainers are going to be very well aware of that. You know, you want to be able to move first with your Arcanine if you have something to help shut it down. Or if you know that the other Arcanine is going to cause a problem for your teammate, hey, you can do the same back. Of course, on paper, the matchup's kind of interesting. You've got Rotom versus Arcanine. Rotom beats Arcanine. Then you've got kind of Rotom versus Arcanine, which is the same in the mirror. But it looks like we're just going to be starting off just trying to slow the match down a little bit. Snarl from James's Arcanine, matched by a Snarl from Eduardo's Arcanine. Yeah. Let's see if they keep going matching each other.
Yeah, we'll see if it keeps carrying out this way. The Arcanine on James's side, again, moving first. Going to go for that Snarl as Nasty Plot comes out from James's Rotom. Knowing that there really isn't anything Arcanine can do to Rotom other than threaten a stat drop with that Snarl. Going for the Nasty Plot boosts it right back up. And that's exactly the same thought Eduardo had for his Rotom here, boosting up sharply. So that it will now be at +1.
Yeah, both players acknowledging the danger of Snarl on their opponent's side of the field, saying, you know what, if I'm going to be attacking, I need to be attacking at full power. I don't want to be slowing down by this anything coming out, so I'm going to Nasty Plot. And both players see that option from Arcanine, respect that, and respond to it. So really like both players knowing the ins and outs. I'm just waiting for one of them to, you know, maybe misstep and not respect a play, or just go for it and really start picking up the pace of this game early. We can see on Edu's side of the field, he's mulling over that decision. He's taking his time, really trying to get in James's head a little bit.
Yeah, you're not just playing against the two Pokemon on the field or the Pokemon in the back, you're also playing against the player and trying to figure out how they're going to play. This could potentially have been a turn to get Dynamax up potentially and remove an Arcanine, but instead, no Dynamax coming out here. It's going to be Snarl again coming out from James's Arcanine here, retaliating with a Snarl of the Arcanine on Eduardo's side as well. So bringing both these Rotoms back down to neutral and just delivering out some chip damage a piece across all the Pokemon here. Rotom again going for the Nasty Plot here on James's side. So going to be now boosting itself up to +2, which is probably the more optimal statistic you want on your Pokemon if you want to click that Dynamax move going forward. And again, the Rotom on Eduardo's side goes, yes, me too, I'd like to get boosted back up. And now you have, again, another mind game. Are you going to Dynamax on this turn? Are you maybe going to play defensively? Are you going to leave your Arcanine in? Or are you going to switch out for something in the back?
I think both players have committed that at some point we're probably going to exchange the Arcanines, right? Like, we're going to let the Rotoms deal the damage. No Dynamax yet, and we're just going back to the exchange of Snarls by the looks of things. Of course, these Rotoms don't want to fall short. They're so scared of maybe Hydro Pumping and not getting that knockout and then being a little bit behind that they did keep those Nasty Plots up. But now they're back at +1 with Snarls shed all around. James's Rotom moves first, does fire the Hydro Pump at Arcanine, does land the hit, and there's the knockout. We'll see if Eduardo can match it up with an exact replica of the same from his side. He's going to Hydro Pump, connect it, no problem, and we'll make sure it gets the knockout before we speak too early. It does. There's the boost coming in play, and these players just mirror imaging each other. We're going to get the first kind of choice, but they maybe get to bring something different.
Exactly. It looks like it's the Snorlax coming in here for Eduardo, but I don't know about you, Adam, but the anticipation building for me at the moment for when they're going to Dynamax has just been critical, and then they don't even Dynamax, they go for Hydro Pump, and Hydro Pump's a move that we've seen so many times cause Heartbreak where it misses. Not the most accurate choice, so maybe risking it and going for that Hydro Pump. High risk, high reward play, and both these players did manage to connect it on the Arcanines. They're now gone, no more Snarls, as James decides to bring in the Dragapult as Snorlax comes in for Eduardo. So again, interesting. Snorlax not going to take any of those Ghost type moves from the opposing Dragapult, but Dragapult can still deal out some big damage of its own. It's very speedy.
Yeah, Dragapult is a very offensive Pokemon and very, very fast, where Snorlax moves a little bit later, but can take a number of hits very, very comfortably. Of course, there's that interaction. You say Snorlax known for its normal type attacks, do get the same type of attack bonus on those, but can't do anything to the Dragapult with them. The Rotom's going to start out protecting on James' side. Hey, look, Eduardo's Rotom's protecting as well. Both players aren't so worried about the Rotom getting knocked out. They want to keep that around. But Dragon Darts starting out the turn from this this side of James's field from the Dragapult. And hey, we're going to get a very different play here now as Yawn connects into the Protect of the Rotom. So not going to be effective, and that's, I think, the first kind of advantage carved open for James, where he landed damage and took nothing back in return.
This is definitely the turn where the board state is starting to change, and James, like we said, is now gaining an advantage. He's got some good damage off onto that Snorlax. Like, Dragon Darts did do a huge chunk of damage there, almost about a third, and in return, Snorlax went for its Yawn into the Protect. So to no avail there, really, Eduardo just sort of sat and took damage, and being the slower side of the field means that going into this next turn, James is in a position where he can again start applying a lot of damage again, and just continually start to whittle away at Eduardo's team. Of course, both trainers still have not used their Dynamax, and this could be the turn for these trainers to maybe really go on the offensive here. James is really free to Dynamax either one of his Pokemon. It's going to be interesting to see which one he goes for. The Rotom has so many boosts, but of course, Dragapult can get the extra damage out from those max moves. It is indeed going to be the Dragapult. Does make sense if you think about it. It's going to be able to go for really speedy, powerful attacks, whereas the Rotom, again, it's boosted, it's already powerful, it doesn't need Dynamax, and it's not really threatened by either of the Pokemon on Eduardo's side. If the Dragapult can get rid of the Snorlax, then he doesn't have to worry about a Yawn either, but Snorlax is able to survive.
Yeah, Snorlax takes that max airstream quite comfortably and a speed boost onto the side of James's field. It is taking a little bit of damage from the Life Orb. That's probably going to add up, but Rotom not messing around, following up with the Hydro Pump onto Snorlax. There's a number of ways he could have got around the Yawn, and this one definitely the most offensive, just saying, you know what, I'm going to attack you twice, and I'm not going to let you do anything. Eduardo is free to fire back with a attack off his Rotom, but it's not going to be enough. That's not the premium attack you wanted to land, and you know, James's Rotom's going to heal up a little bit, looking pretty healthy right now.
Exactly, and getting that speed boost as well from the max airstream means there really isn't anything that Eduardo can do now to outspeed. James has all the offensive pressure on the field here. Dragapult looking really healthy as well. I think it's only taken its Life Orb recoil damage, and so it's going to be able to apply a lot of pressure. Togekiss coming in though for Eduardo. It's a good Pokemon choice here in the sense it can redirect attacks away from Rotom, leaving it free to go for some big damage. But if Dragapult maybe goes for a Max Guard here and Rotom goes for a Thunderbolt into that Togekiss, then Togekiss is going to be gone, and then Dragapult's able to target down that Rotom going forward into the next couple of turns. So it's really whether Eduardo is able to stand the onslaught here from James's two very speedy and very offensive Pokemon.
Yeah, I mean, with the boost from Max Airstream as well, there's no way that Eduardo is going to be given the opportunity to move first. But, you know, Togekiss and Rotom aren't the easiest Pokemon to knock out. They've got a natural kind of bulk to them and are able to take hits quite well. We're finally going to see the Dynamax from Eduardo, holding it until he's down to his last two Pokemon, really saying, you know what, this is going to be my way out of this one, with Dynamax on the Togekiss. So needs to start dealing some big damage, and that's going to be able to, you know, at least match up against the Dragapult on James's side.
Exactly, no redirection potential here, but you are still at full health, able to get more obviously from the Dynamax, but no offensive pressure here, just going straight for the Max Guard as Dragapult goes for the Max Phantasm, targeting down into that Rotom, picks up a nice clean KO there, leaving Togekiss as the last remaining Pokemon there for Eduardo. Also lowering its defense, that can become critical later on if Dragapult maybe wants to play defensively around the turns of the Togekiss. It can deal out some sort of offensive pressure there as well. But Togekiss here, the one problem with being in the Dynamax situation is you can only target one Pokemon. Potentially it could have access to something like Dazzling Gleam, pick up some damage, but it looks like James is just in such a dominant position here.
Yeah, well, he's going to keep on going, dealing damage with this Dragapult. Max Phantasm doing a good amount with the onto the Togekiss, lowering the defense, certainly helpful. But this Togekiss not even given an opportunity to fire back with a Fairy-type move. Just caught with the Thunderbolt from Rotom, and James, after those mirror turns at the beginning, finding an immediate advantage and just pushing on to take game one in this set.
Yeah, those first couple of turns were really intense. Like, it was the same strategies from both players, and you might kind of think that's not the most interesting thing, but the fact that the players, the Rotoms, were both boosting up and up and up, and no one was Dynamaxing, no one was changing anything. It was like this anticipation for when is the game going to change, when's the turn going to happen where something drastic occurs, and really it was that turn where both Arcanines went down and it gave the players the opportunity to switch in another Pokemon. And I think but James bringing the speedier offensive pressure of the Dragapult really did help him out here. I can understand why Snorlax would be a good choice in the sense you can start causing some chaos with Yawn and things like that, but you can't really go for Yawn if you're KO'd, and that's exactly the strategy James went for.
Yeah, I mean, there was a number of ways to play around Yawn, and James just denied it in the simplest way possible by getting knockouts. And that's how you win games of Pokemon, right? You knock out all of your opponent's Pokemon, and that's one of the easiest ways to get there. So really playing to his win condition, he had more offensive power on the field at that time and really went for it. Yawn from Snorlax is great. It can slow your opponents down, but then you're struggling to get the damage output from the Snorlax. So it was really given a big task, and I think holding that Dynamax to so late as well kind of put Eduardo a little bit behind the pace. Maybe if he turned it on a little bit earlier, we could have had a very different match.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the Snorlax had the Rotom there to deal out some big offensive pressure, but the fact that James was able to get the max airstream off, meaning that Rotom was now sitting vulnerable to being doubled up by the Dragapult and the Rotom on James's side, meant that the strategy just didn't pay off for him. So I think going into game 2, if you're Eduardo in this situation, you maybe need to start sort of going on the offensive a little bit earlier. Potentially if he'd picked up the Arcanine a turn before, or had been maybe brought slightly different leads, could apply some offensive pressure, it would have helped him out. So let's see how they adjust going into game 2. It's going to be Arcanine and Snorlax for Eduardo, so Arcanine's still on the field, but not in mirror in this game 2. James deciding to go for Togekiss and Dragapult, a very classic combination there.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't get any mirrors this time. Both trainers deciding, you know what, I don't want to play that game again. I don't want to deal with that kind of early turn mirror matching that I did last time. So I'm going to mix it up. I think, keeping the Arcanine, not a bad idea at all from Eduardo's side of the field, but he's facing down a Togekiss and Dragapult, who are able to put on a good amount of pressure, and this follow me to start out the turn can really change how things are going.
Yep, no Dynamax again. Both these players liking to keep this for kind of a late game strategy as Dragon Dance comes out, goes into both of these Pokemon and does deal a good chunk of damage to that Arcanine, as well as a little bit of chip to the Snorlax. Arcanine though doing what it wants to do, as always going for those snarls. Of course super effective against the Dragapult, but reducing the special attack isn't really going to be too critical against Dragapult. We've seen already it likes the sort of physical attacker stance. Yawn this time though on Snorlax is going to be able to connect against that Togekiss, so unless James is able to remove it from the field, maybe switch it out on this turn, it will be taking a nap on the turn afterwards, meaning it's not going to be able to support Dragapult as much as it would like to.
Yeah, and it's still going to be in a position to do something this turn, which is kind of key, right? You're still in a position to redirect. You could still say, hey, if I'm going to be redirecting your Snarl, yeah, it's going to hit me, but it's really not the end of the world, as Dragapult's going to just keep on dealing damage. And I really don't see many options that involve him being able to comfortably deal with the Dragapult with the Snarl not that effective.
Yeah, I wonder if Eduardo maybe will predict which Pokemon was going to come in there for the Togekiss. Dragapult just going for a protected, doesn't want to take any more damage, and again, still preserving Dynamax from both of these players. Another Snarl coming out here from the Arcanine. I'm going to do a little bit of chip to that extra duel in case it is sort of the Focus Sash variant. Again, not going to worry about that special attack drop. Snorlax going for the Yawn though. Really well played there by Eduardo, knowing that James wants to preserve that Togekiss, knowing something else is going to switch in. It was a really free target to go for that Yawn, and the fact that the Dragapult protected as well just meant that Eduardo really took that turn.
Yeah, I mean, now he's got to keep switching, right, to avoid that Yawn from taking effect. He's just got to keep switching the board around, and that means there's going to be an opportunity for Eduardo to come in and say, you know what, if you're going to be switching around, I'm either just going to keep making you switch by just yawning into that slot, or I'm going to be able to find an opportunity to attack. That said, James is trying to keep the Dragapult safe now, bringing in the Togekiss, which is no longer feeling a little bit drowsy.
Yeah, a double switch actually here for James. Going to bring that Rotom back onto the field. That's a Pokemon that Arcanine doesn't want to see, and so quite rightly it's gone for a Snarl here. This time it is going to really be crucial against both these Pokemon, lowering their special attack. But Rotom is safe to of course go for something like a Nasty Plot on the following turn, as long as it's not yawned by the Snorlax, which it is indeed done. Snorlax knows what it wants to do here, just keeps targeting that left hand slot. James is most likely always going to be switching it out. He doesn't have a way to stop Yawn from sort of the effects of Yawn from going off. He doesn't have a way to stop sleep, so it just seems to be a really good strategy here for Eduardo. But my question is, when are they going to start dealing damage? Like you said, Adam, you have to deal damage to win the game.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting to see the switches James is making here, right? And there's so many ways to avoid it, but the Snorlax is kind of doing very much a different role to what it usually does. Usually it boosts up and deals damage. In this rule, it's
Yeah.
kind of saying, you know what, I'm going to take one Pokemon out of the game. I'm just going to keep you swapping it every single turn because you're so scared of Yawn. And you know what, once I've done that, I'm going to then be able to play the rest of the game. Everything you bring in is going to get snarled, so you're going to lose some offensive pressure, and it's another turn where James is forced to switch, and Eduardo's just going to keep building up. James only wants to play when he's really, really comfortable.
Exactly, and switching in the Dragon Ball here, protecting it with the redirection of the Follow Me on that Togekiss. Arcanine going for the Flamethrower. Not going to deal too much damage against that opposing Togekiss. I can understand why it was a good choice to go for if that Excadrill maybe switched in, but Togekiss just redirecting it away, and of course Togekiss now going to be taking a nap at the end of next turn if James doesn't switch it. This is now kind of where you get to that mind game situation, because if you're James, it might be obvious to keep switching, but now that Arcanine's kind of gone on the offensive, it might be worrying about how he's going to target. Is he going to go for the Snarls? Is he going to go for a Flamethrower and catch my Excadrill on the switch in? But I wouldn't be surprised to still see him switch it out. That's a strategy he's adopted.
Yeah, he really doesn't want to be asleep, and that's something that James is going to be able to really play off. Don't forget this Snarl, it does a little bit of damage, but it's not the craziest amount to anything but this Dragapult. Dragapult just getting out of there, doesn't want to get caught by anything. This Phantom Force could be pretty huge. That Rotom though, taking a little more chip damage, and its special attack isn't very high.
Exactly. I mean, if you're the Rotom here, you might want to go for something like, if you could Dynamax up and go for Max Lightning to stop, with that electric terrain on the field, you'll be able to stop any sleep from occurring as long as you're a grounded Pokemon. And looking at James's team, he's got the Rotom that's levitating up in the air, and the Togekiss that's flying type. It's only really going to help him out against the Dragapult and the Arcanine. So again, not going to be the most helpful of strategies here, and I think Eduardo is really capitalizing on that, keeping a Snorlax in the field, keep going for these Yawns. However, this turn switches out his Arcanine. He's had enough of snarling, going to bring in a Togekiss of his own.
Yeah, and I think he knows that, he's been able to keep snarling, keep James uncomfortable, but what he really wants to do is see if he can catch, a good bit of damage from something like the Phantom Force, not take as much from it as something like the Arcanine might. It does still take a whole lot, bringing it down just under half, but, it's better than something like your Arcanine going, which has been so important with the Snarl. That said, Snorlax finally doing something other than yawning and perfectly catching this Dragapult as it comes back with the Darkest Lariat.
Yeah, I love that play there by Eduardo. Not only do you switch out your Arcanine to not take so much damage from that Phantom Force, you're able to pick up the KO against Dragapult, but critically, with your Arcanine in the back, you can now come back in at a later date and intimidate that Excadrill and apply that offensive pressure. This Togekiss isn't an answer for that Excadrill. The Snorlax doesn't really seem to be either unless it wants to send it asleep. Arcanine really is the Pokemon that Eduardo needs to be able to take it down. We can see he's got the Dragapult in the back as well, but with the utilities he's got on that Arcanine with Will-O-Wisp and Flamethrower, it really is going to be his best answer. So he might want to keep that safe for when Excadrill's on the field, which obviously it is now. Snorlax, though, not yawning at him in that game.
Hey, he's broken the lock, but he got a knockout for it. So I think that's a really good trade there. That said, the Snorlax is still exceptionally healthy. Any damage that's taken has been just recovered by the leftovers. So those early Dragon Darts that we saw from the Dragapult don't matter anymore. Snorlax is still at full health. That said, we're finally going to get some Dynamax action in this game. I've been waiting long enough, both players trying to feel it out, find a comfortable position, and here it is. The Dynamax Togekiss coming through.
Yeah, the tables are turning now back onto the offensive. This really did seem to be kind of the turning point in the last game. I wonder if it'll be as pivotal in this one. It's going to be Dynamax Togekiss there on James's side as Swords Dance comes out from the Excadrill. So going to boost itself up despite the Intimidate from that Arcanine. Togekiss going for the Max Airstream, going to target into that Snorlax. I love this play because now that Excadrill is guaranteed to outspeed that Arcanine going into the next turn. So going to be able to apply a lot of offensive pressure there going forward. Of course, Arcanine has switched in on this turn. It can't move, it can't actually do anything to the Excadrill, as Snorlax does go for the Yawn. Going into that Togekiss again means that Excadrill is going to be safe on the next turn, but Togekiss in its Dynamax, when you're in Dynamax, Adam, you don't want to switch out.
No, you really want to stay in. You've only got 3 turns to take advantage of it. And yes, you're going to fall asleep at the end of this turn, but you know what? You can do something on this turn, right? And that's kind of the value proposition that you have to look at and say, yeah, I'm going to be asleep, but I'd rather have 2 turns of Dynamax damage than just 1 turn. And so I think Eduardo's going to be able to kind of capitalize on that and then start really focusing down on the Excadrill. The Excadrill is a concern. The Excadrill is something he has to worry about. It's Swords Dance boosted, it's boosted in speed by Max Airstream, so it's going to be causing a whole lot of problems, and this switch is fantastic. You just have to wonder if James managed to call it.
Yeah, I really like that switch there from Eduardo. Maybe calling there was going to be something like an Earthquake coming out from that Excadrill, but instead from James, really bold play, going for another Swords Dance, just keeping himself really on the offensive pressure here as Max Starfall comes out from the Togekiss. I love this play as well because with the Misty Terrain on the field, the grounded Pokemon are not going to be affected by any status effects. So now that Excadrill is really sitting in a pretty position. It can't be put to sleep. It's speedy and it is super offensive. So quite wise from Snorlax to get itself a cheeky defense boost from the Curse, but that Excadrill is still looking really, really strong. Even in Intimidate, I think it'll still be at +2.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be a whole lot to handle, and we've seen James is only confident, I think, in attacking with some of his Pokemon when they're in positive boosts, right? He doesn't want to be dealing with any drops or just kind of that one stage, as we saw in Game 1. Those nasty plots, he keeps them rolling until he's actually boosted and able to counteract, in that case, the Snarl. In this case, it's the Intimidate. He wants to make sure that's counteracted properly and really go from there. That said, though, it's kind of interesting, right? The Togekiss is asleep. So it gives Eduardo kind of an opportunity to say, you know what? Yeah, your Excadrill is a problem, but your Excadrill is kind of fighting on its own. Your Excadrill is there just trying to do what it can on its own. So you know what? I'm not going to let it do that. I'm going to be able to start answering back with a Dynamax of my own. In this case, it's going to be that Dynamax Dragapult that we saw him select. We kind of get that insight that we don't always get. And you know what? Dynamax Dragapult is an issue. If you're not hitting it super effectively, if you don't have an answer to it, just the pure boost in health is a lot to handle.
It certainly is. Let's see how it handles this Earthquake, though. As you said in Dynamax form, able to take that really well and deal out a really strong Max Phantasm in return. Excadrill not going to be able to survive this. And I think that's the lovely thing about Togekiss being guaranteed the sleep turn as well. The Dragapult doesn't have to worry about taking any kind of fairy type attacks. It's free to just go straight into that Excadrill. Excadrill did, of course, manage to get off some good damage there against both these Pokemon, but Togekiss being asleep, meaning that all those boosts there from the Excadrill have now kind of gone to waste. He's not able to take down that Arcanine. The one thing James does have, though, in the back is that Rotom, and we've seen it likes to boost up, and it could potentially be a way to take down the Arcanine later on. But at the moment, that Snorlax, like you've said before, Adam, it's just sitting there. It likes to go for recovery with those leftovers. It could potentially sit here and start regaining its health a little bit more.
Yeah, you're kind of in this tricky situation if you're James. Yes, you've got your Rotom in. It's not got any Snarl drops. That's a better time than when we saw Rotom earlier in the game. If you leave the Snorlax alone, it's going to start recovering with leftovers. If you don't, you've just seen it use Seed Bomb. We literally just saw Seed Bomb from it into that Togekiss, maybe trying to call that Rotom. You know, you can't leave it alone, but you really don't want Dragapult just attacking you either. And it looks like that's all he's got to do is just kind of try and take that. Togekiss not going to be afforded the chance to wake up.
Again, love this play here by Eduardo. Like you've said, he's got the Seed Bomb on there. That's how he can take care of the Rotom. So going for the Max Phantasm into the Togekiss just alleviates from the field, but Hydro Pump, it did miss. We finally saw a Hydro Pump actually miss. I thought that wasn't a real thing anymore after game 1. Allowing Seed Bomb to connect onto that Rotom, picking up a really nice KO there, and Eduardo manages to take game 2. What a turnaround. Like, that's not, I'm not over that Snorlax right there. At the beginning of the game, it just sat there, yawn. I'm just going to sit here and be no offensive pressure at all, just really good synergy for my partner Pokemon. And then with one curse, the tables completely change. It's able to take the Earthquake, it's able to deal out big damage with Seed Bomb. It was all about Snorlax in that game. Yeah,
no, Snorlax did so much, and it's really exciting to see it play a completely different role. Like, we literally just saw 2 Snorlaxes in our round before. And now we're seeing it do something completely different. Yawning, consistently forcing some really strange, some really tricky decisions from James. And I think even though Eduardo, wasn't always clearly in the lead, just the pressure he was applying said, you know what, actually I am in the lead. And I'm able to start capitalizing on it. I liked when he changed out the Arcanine and said, you know what, I've done enough with this Arcanine. You know what I'm going to do with it. So yeah, I'm going to mix it up. I'm going to bring in some different Pokemon on my side. And I'm going to start dealing damage to you. Changing on that Snorlax, saying, all right, when's the opportunity to Darkest Lariat? when's the opportunity to Seed Bomb. Really fantastic play. And weaving in that curse just made them so much more potent as well.
I think that was the thing with Snorlax. In game 1, he really brought it in a bad position. And it definitely wasn't the Pokemon of choice when it came down against that Dragapult on James's side. But in this game too, leading with it and putting it in a position where it can really do what that particular build of Snorlax wants to do, just enabled Eduardo, like you said, to constantly apply that pressure slowly throughout the game, meaning James had to keep switching. He was constantly on the back foot, having to try and out-predict what Edu was going to do. And eventually it just meant that Snorlax was able to really control the game and force a game 3.
Yeah, I actually really like this Snorlax build. It doesn't have the normal type attack, which is very kind of non-traditional on Snorlax. It's been around for 20 plus years now, and you think, you know what, I've got a Snorlax, I'm going to need Double Edge or something of that nature to deal as much damage as possible. And I really like the team building here to say, you know what, actually I don't need that, I don't want that. I'm going to take 2 moves that I might not get the same type attack bonus on, but are going to be so good against the rest of the game. You know, we've talked about it before. If you don't have a Dark-type move on Snorlax, you struggle against Dragapult, and he's got the Dark-type move. In this case, he's coming up trumps by saying, you know what, I've got Seed Bomb, I can deal with this Rotom.
That's the thing as well, when you actually look at the 4 Pokemon Eduardo keeps bringing, he doesn't really have a super strong answer to that Rotom, unless, you know, you do some really big damage with the Dragapult, but having Seed Bomb on there just takes the pressure off Dragapult a little bit. The leads here, it's game 3, guys, so really everything is here to play for. Arcanine and Rotom on James's side. It looks like game 1 all over again for him, but Eduardo sticking with Arcanine and Snorlax on his side of the field. So both these players leading with the leads they had in the games they won.
Yeah, I mean, both players knowing what works for them, being able to capitalize off that. That said, James getting off to a fantastic start, burning the Snorlax on Eduardo's side with a Will-O-Wisp. That's connecting, no problem. And hey, Eduardo knows what to do against Arcanine Rotom. Land those snarls.
Yeah, exactly. Just go for the snarl here. Will-O-Wisp landing on the Snorlax will reduce its physical output though. However, the Rotom on James's side going, I'm not setting up this time, I'm just going straight for that Hydro Palm. It connects onto that Arcanine, dealing some good damage as Snorlax is able to go for a Yawn onto that opposing Arcanine, again forcing James to start doing some switching. Of course, the one thing as well with that Arcanine, if it keeps switching out, it's going to keep intimidating. But due to the Pokemon that Eduardo's got and the fact that Snorlax is just going to be able to Yawn, I don't think Eduardo's too upset about that. He just wants to keep going for these setups.
Yeah, and I think that's smart to kind of respect the potential Will-O-Wisp and say, you know what, I'm just going to Yawn and put you in that awkward position I was putting you in last game, the game that I won. That said, Eduardo's going to start making changes of his own, getting rid of that Arcanine and saying, you know what, I think you've seen enough of the Snarl. I'm going to get Dragapult in and I'm going to start trying to deal with you that way. Rotom, unhappy with the Snarl from the previous turn it seems, making sure that he's back in a nice healthy position, getting his nasty plot back, and Eduardo, such fantastic play, forcing so many switches out of James. Another Yawn just landing.
Exactly, it now puts that Togekiss in a really awkward position. We saw it last time, go for that Dynamax, deal out some really big damage with sort of a max Starfall. And that's something that you might want to apply against that Dragapult, but do you think James is going to risk it again, or do you think he'll switch?
I feel like James has been so cautious in some of his decision making, and I don't mean that in a bad way at all, but he only attacks when he's boosted. He always switches out from the Yawn. He doesn't want to get put to sleep, and he's just been playing around that. And I think Eduardo's, you know, in game 2 we saw him play around it so well, being able to capitalize off it and just start landing damage on all of those turns. Of course, the Intimidate is going to only really affect Snorlax, the Clear Body on the Dragapult, keeping it away from that. And, you know, the Will-O-Wisp there is an issue. The Snorlax isn't even interested in attacking though, as Dragapult just starts landing big damage.
Yeah, even despite that Intimidate, obviously, sorry, the Clear Body on there as well, going to stop any Intimidate from affecting the Dragapult, so able to still deal some big damage with the Dragon Dance, as Snorlax, again, just sitting on this field, going for more Yawns here, this time going into that Arcanine slot. I think it's really sort of solid play here by Eduardo. He keeps knowing James is going to switch, so it's always a safe target to keep going for those Yawns, but you better not be underestimating this Rotom anytime soon.
No, and there's actually some interesting options that James could pull out with the Yawn that he's currently kind of facing down. Be curious to see if he goes for any of those. But right now, you know, the Snorlax is just on Yawn duty. That's all it can do, right? It really is stuck on that. That said, though, this Dragapult on Eduardo's side going to keep putting down a lot of damage, bringing Arcanine down into range to consume its berry. Wants to say it as healthy as possible, the Margot berry in this instance. And this Rotom getting pretty low. also low enough to consume a berry of its own.
Yeah, it looks like Eduardo's not too worried here about potentially losing the Dragapult to sort of a double up with Snarl or anything coming up from both these Pokemon. Eduardo, though, is unfortunately his Dragapult is going to take a Will-O-Wisp from that opposing Arcanine, as Rotom follows up with the Thunderbolt, this time going into that Snorlax, just whittling away at its health a little bit more. As it goes for the Yawn, of course, Arcanine didn't switch out. We were just saying, you know, James keeps going for all these switches, but this time he's opted not to go for it onto that Arcanine slot.
Yeah, and I actually kind of like that from James, to say, you know what, it's more important that I get the Will-O-Wisp down now. I'd love to keep playing this game where I switch out every time. I know you're going to throw a Yawn in it, so your Snorlax isn't doing anything, and it's more valuable for me to get the burn down on Dragapult and reduce the damage that you've been putting out. So really smart adaptation there from James, and Eduardo's probably looking down thinking, that's been working for so long. Of course he'd figure it out and put a limit to that one.
Yeah, that's really where these game dynamics do change when the player breaks from their sort of traditional strategy. Togekiss here coming in for that sleeping Arcanine. Dragapult going for the Dragon Dance here. Going to go straight into that Rotom there. Of course, Togekiss being Fairy type, the little Dreepies are going to dodge out the way and make sure they attack Pokemon that can actually take the damage here. Rotom going to fire back with a Thunderbolt though, going to go into that Snorlax and pick up the KO. So big sigh of relief there from James's side. Doesn't have to worry about any more Yawns coming out, as well as Dragapult's offensive pressure really being weakened. You know, Rotom was able to survive that turn.
Yeah, I mean, that's really, really good. Being able to take both parts of Dragon Darts, because of course it has to avoid the Togekiss. Really, really key there for James. That Will-O-Wisp just so worth falling asleep for if you're in the awkward position that you were. So really nice adaptation, and I think that puts James quite comfortably in the driving seat now. You know, he's got his Togekiss on the field. He's staring down something like the Dragapult, which he does like. Of course, Eduardo almost forced to bring in the Excadrill, I think, to start answering that. But, you know, James, I think, is probably feeling a lot better about breaking that Yawn cycle a lot earlier in the game than he did in the previous game, which he didn't manage to get through.
This could also be a really nice turn here for Eduardo to go for something like a Swords Dance on his Excadrill, while Dragapult picks up the KO against that Rotom. As an Excadrill, you're not too worried about the Togekiss, and even if James is able to switch in his Arcanine from the back, give an Intimidate to the Excadrill, then, you know, having that Swords Dance boost is going to negate that, and that puts Excadrill in a really strong position going forward to maybe be the Dynamax Pokemon of choice for Eduardo.
Yeah, and I'll be curious to see if he does commit to that as a plan. You know, I think the Dynamax choice is going to be key towards the end of this game. That Rotom, real low on health, doesn't want to stick around and get knocked out, so he does just bring in the sleeping Arcanine. It might be asleep, but it can still land an Intimidate. Personally, I don't think that a sleeping Arcanine is as intimidating as possible, but hey, getting a drop to the attack of that Excadrill, really, really important.
Yeah, Eduardo, though, not opting to go for something like a Swords Dance. If that is, of course, something he's running on his Excadrill. Instead, just going straight here for the Dynamax. Really wants to apply a lot of strong offensive pressure. And looking at the Pokemon on James's side, Excadrill really is a strong Pokemon to be facing down against them. Can hit them all with some really strong damage. Dragapult gonna just disappear for this turn. Will reappear in the next one. Going into one of James's Pokemon for a little bit of chip damage. As Max Steel Spike comes out, though, into that Togekiss. Does deal a good chunk of damage, but thanks to the Intimidate, does not pick up the KO. Will crucially be boosting up its defenses though, as Togekiss here goes for the Dazzling Gleam. Of course, misses the Dragapult that's hidden away in the Phantom Realm and gets a little bit of chip on that Excadrill. But you do not have to worry if that Arcanine maybe wants to wake up anytime soon and go for a Will-O-Wisp, then this Excadrill isn't going to be as strong as, you know, it just has demonstrated.
Yeah, I mean, that showed how good the Intimidate is, and if he can get the Will-O-Wisp down as well, that Excadrill is going to be really struggling to deal those huge amounts of damage. Of course, you know, he does still have options to switch around. He's not stuck with just these Pokemon. He's got the low health Rotom. He's got a mystery fourth Pokemon as well that we don't know anything about that could be absolutely crucial. And there it is. The Togekiss doesn't feel safe. It says, you know what? One Max Steel Spike is more than enough for me.
Yeah, potentially sacking the Rotom here, which, you know, can allow Togekiss to come back in, but either way, Eduardo will still get those boosts up. The Phantom Force going into that Arcanine, it's still going to be taking a little bit of a nap. Phantom Force wasn't enough to pick up the KO, as Max Steel Spike does come out again from that Excadrill, picking up the KO against Rotom. Yes, it does pick up the KO there, but it kind of was sacked by James there. You know, he wanted to maybe get that lesser health Pokemon out allowing him to have the free switch in later and kind of burn through some of these Dynamax turns. Dragapult as well, even though it's burned and not dealing as much sort of output, it's still chipping away, and that's helping its little partner Excadrill out here.
Yeah, it's really helping, I think, make those decisions on where you want to be landing the damage. That said, though, the Dragapult's kind of on a timer, and so I think committing to chip is the best thing it can do. The burn, the recoil from Life Orb, really starting to add up and bring that Dragapult quite low as we go through this game. Of course, we do finally see James's fourth Pokemon, the Dragapult of his own, and we know how well he's played with that in the past few games. It's going to keep itself safe for now, maybe trying to fish to see if he can get his Arcanine to wake up sometime soon, but Dragon Darts keeping the offensive pressure up from Eduardo.
Yeah, exactly. Just picks up the KO there against that Arcanine. The Dragapult on James' side looking relatively healthy and wanted to stay that way by going for the Protect. Max Steel Spike going straight into it though. True Protect though does barely anything, so a wise Protect there from James, meaning that on the next turn potentially can deal out a lot more damage. But you do have to be careful of all these defense boosts that Eduardo has now got. That's really something James has to factor into his calculations.
Yeah, James has to start attacking on the special side of things. You know, you're really not going to be able to use physical attacks after 3 max steel spikes. It's not a viable option to pick up those knockouts. Of course, Togekiss, really well known for its special attacks, and Dragapult as well isn't exactly a slouch when it comes to those. Most we've seen, though, have been more physical, and that's fine. That's a nice adaptation. But, you know, it's going to be curious to see if that might be a key difference in their team.
Well, towards the end of this Game 3 here, James is going for that Dynamax. Going to be the Dragapult, of course. Didn't make too much sense to do the Togekiss at this stage, and with Dragapult being able to deal out some good damage, let's just boost that up with turning them into max moves as well. I'm going to be interested to see who he targets. Most likely it's going to be that Excadrill, but you would have to potentially worry about Protect. It's going to negate some of the damage here. Dragapult on Eduardo's side, being nice and speedy, just decides to hide away again, protect itself with this turn. So if you're James, you really do need to have targeted into that Excadrill with a Max Phantasm. So even though it's not dealing too much damage, it will be lowering that defense by 1 stage, meaning that on your next attack, you're going to be able to deal a little bit more damage out. But Excadrill going for that Iron Head into the Togekiss. It's going to say if that Iron Head was going into the Dragapult, it could be a way back here for Eduardo.
Yeah, I mean, that would have been a lot better on that Togekiss. Very smart. I really like that he's kind of seen that opportunity at the end right there of those Dynamax turns. And Excadrill said, you know what, now they're not max moves, I can protect against them. And able to carve out that advantage. We see there, you know, the Max Phantasm starting to cause some problems a little bit. And maybe, you know, getting close to being able to deal with that Excadrill before it does anything back to this Togekiss. That then puts the onus on Dragapult to say, you know what, I need to get the knockout on Togekiss, else it's going to catch me with a Fairy type attack. And we'll really see if Excadrill can just take it through this Protect. Knows that there's a lot of damage coming his way. Ooh.
Oh, is Togekiss just hanging on there? Yes, it looks like it is. Hanging on by maybe only 1 or 2 hit points. Max Phantasm comes out again from this Dragapult going into that Excadrill, and you can really see how little damage is being done even through the Protect. That really was minimal. You would expect that to do a lot more, but those defense boosts really helping it out. You might have almost thought something like a Max Wormwind would have been good here to start lowering the attack so you don't have to worry about the Excadrill. You might as well get that defense down as low as you can get it before maybe your last turn of Dynamax. So potentially that could be what that Dragapult wants to go for. But Eduardo now down to his last 2 Pokemon.
Yeah, I mean, he's really kind of slowing down a little bit, and James saving that Dynamax Dragapult for the end, really able to apply a lot of pressure with it. Of course, this is going to be its last turn in Dynamax, but both the Pokemon on Eduardo's side of the field looking like a nice little target, you know, really trying to say, you know what, that's exactly how we want to do it. We really want to be able to get those knockouts now. Excadrill forced to try and protect again, doesn't get it, and this could be really, really bad for Eduardo.
Yeah, Eduardo looking to be in a bit of a sticky situation here as Max Phantasm comes out again from this Dragapult. Going into the Excadrill this time thanks to the defenses being lowered. All that effort Excadrill put in with the Max Steel Spikes really to no avail as Dragapult's able to pick up the KO. As Arcanine now sitting on this field, we know this Arcanine is not the most offensive. I think we only saw Flamethrower as its move, sort of offensive move. That's something Dragapult isn't going to worry about at all. even the Will-O-Wisp in this situation, you're not going to worry too much about, because you're faster, you're really good sort of physical, offensive pressure here. Should be able to pick up a nice KO against the Arcanine with sort of one fell swoop.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much being asked of this Arcanine right now. It's, you know, you can't deal with both the Togekiss and the Dragapult. You can hit them both with Snarl, then you're still going to be taking a whole lot of damage. Togekiss says, you know what, I don't even want the danger of you attacking directly into the Dragapult. I'm just going to follow me, keep all eyes off the Dragapult. And while he does that, there's the first repeat. Doesn't even need the second to get the knockout. And James Baek is going to be the victor in this round 1 of our winners bracket, starting off nice and strong.
That was an amazing best of 3 to watch, to be honest, because you're looking at a mirror game, and I know some people sort of say mirror games are not always the most thrilling, and particularly when you see that game 1